Do you think it's possible to have a truly original idea? Um, do you think that it's possible to come up with a completely unique invention that is 100% yours and that nobody has influence on? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today in this video. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Ross Persig. I'm the creator of IMU. And the whole philosophy behind IMU, which stands for International Municipal University, is I am because you are. People aren't people without other people. It's based on the South African philosophy of Ubuntu. So this idea that we're all connected in this sort of web that stretches all over the world, and also within our minds and our history and stuff like that. But I don't want to get too much into that. I just wanted to focus on this topic because I have what's called immortal mentors. Actually, I was going back and forth between the name of IMU to be Immortal Mentors University because I think there are people in the history of humans that have just showed an example through their actions and their creations of human potential and what we can do. You know, Leonardo da Vinci, Frederick Douglass, Helen Keller, Francisco Ferrer, Edward Carpenter, Benjamin Franklin, Mark Twain. And I was looking at Helen Keller today, her story of my life, which is her autobiography, and I remember that she was accused of plagiarism. And I was kind of investigating it, and I found that she was only 12 years old. And remember, Helen Keller, when she was very, very little, lost her ability to see or to hear. So she was deaf and blind. And she wrote this story called The Frost King, a short story. And I was reading this on Wikipedia, and I'm like, who are these people? Because keep in mind, she's 12 years old. So this is kind of the gist of it. I'll read kind of what happened. So a friend, one of Perkins' teachers, Perkins is the school for the blind. So the school that she sent her story to. So Helen Keller sent a story to Michael Anagnos, the head of the Perkins School for the Blind. Okay, so little context there. So one of the Perkins teachers informed the Gazette, a Gazette that picked it up, a journal, the Goodson Gazette, a journal on deaf-blind education, that he believed it a deliberate attempt at fraud by Keller's handlers. Long story short, they accused Anne Sullivan and Helen's teacher for telling her the story, but you just read this this whole sort of witch hunt that they did. These adults that are accusing this 12-year-old girl that can't see or hear of plagiarism. And there's something called cryptomnesia, I think. It's like when you remember something, you think you have an original idea, but it's actually a memory from something before. This happened to me recently. I was watching the movie Hitch, and there's a quote that's in the movie. I saw this movie when I was young, and it was like, there's more to life than watching people live it. And I remember coming up with that quote in university about Facebook, thinking like, you know what, there's more to life than watching people live. But so we're all kind of maybe, what do you call it? You know, sort of immune to this, or not immune, but you know what I'm saying. We all maybe fall susceptible to this. But okay, so it says, by all accounts, the teacher reported what Keller had told her to Anagnos. A storm of outrage swept through the school, apparently headed by the teachers. Keller's biographers, particularly Joseph P. Lash, suggest that they were also incensed by the fact that Sullivan and Keller used the facilities, although they were not employed or officially registered with the school. So, listen to this. An in-house trial ensued to determine whether or not Sullivan had deliberately falsified Keller's abilities. 8 teachers interrogated the 12-year-old child for 2 hours and fought the issue to a draw, the tie-breaking vote being cast by Anagnos in Keller's favor. Although Sullivan protested that, quote, all use of language is imitative, and one's style is made up of all other styles that one has met. And even Canby came forward to say that Keller's version was superior to her own. So the author of the original story that this supposedly plagiarized, this short story that Helen Keller came up with, said it was better than her own. So it says, Anagnos never regained his faith in Sullivan or Keller and described them years later as a living lie. And it says that Now, there's a citation needed on this from Wikipedia, so maybe this is not accurate, but Keller had a nervous breakdown over the incident and never wrote fiction again. So then it goes like on to say, so it's just you read this and there's all these theories. So maybe she wrote it as a paraphrased story that she heard, or not heard, but she had spelled into her hand. Maybe Sullivan told her the story. All these theories and these teachers and these adult people accusing a young girl. And you want to say, well, that's in the 1800s. Times were different. You can't judge those morals based on today's morals. But wait for this. This is amazing. Because Mark Twain sent her a letter. So after reading about this incident from a copy of the biography Helen had given him, so Helen Keller sent Mark Twain a copy of her autobiography. He was inspired to write his famous St. Patrick's Day 1903 letter to her, in which he described the controversy as owlishly idiotic and grotesque. So, I don't know how many of you are watching this video, maybe nobody's watching this video, but if you are still watching, I'm going to read this letter because it's so good. And Mark Twain's humor and his lucidity is just so refreshing, because it's like a light of reason in this like weird witch hunt, in my opinion. But so here's the letter written in 1903 by Mark Twain to Helen Keller. Sorry if I get some of these words wrong. Maybe there's some old words that I might not pronounce correctly, but anyways. To Helen Keller in Wrentham, Massachusetts. Riverdale on the Hudson, St. Patrick's Day, '03. Dear Helen, I must steal half a moment from my work to say how glad I am to have your book, and how highly I value it, both for its own sake and as a remembrances of an affectionate friendship which has subsisted between us for 9 years without a break, and without a single act of violence that I can call to mind. I suppose there's nothing like it in heaven, and not likely to be, until we get there and show off. I often think of it with longing, and how they'll say, "There they come, sit down in the front." I'm practicing with the tin halo. You do the same. I was at Henry Rogers last night, and of course we talked of you. He is not at all well. You will not like to hear that, but, like you and me, he is just as lovely as ever. I'm charmed with your book, enchanted. You are a wonderful creature, the most wonderful in the world. You and your other half together, Miss Sullivan. I mean, for it took the pair of you to make a complete and perfect whole. How she stands out in her letters. Her brilliancy, penetration, originality, wisdom, character, and the fine literary competencies of her pen. They are all there. Oh dear me, how unspeakably funny and owlishly idiotic and grotesque was that plagiarism farce. As if there was much of anything in any human utterance, oral or written, except plagiarism. The kernel, the soul, let us go further and say the substance, the bulk, the actual and valuable material of all human utterances, is plagiarism. For substantially all ideas are second-hand, consciously and unconsciously drawn from a million outside sources, and daily used for the garnerer with a pride and satisfaction born of the superstition that he originated them, whereas there is not a rag of originality about them anywhere except the little discoloration they get from his mental and moral caliber and his temperament, and which is revealed in characteristics of phrasing. When a great orator makes a great speech, you are listening to 10 centuries and 10,000 men, but we call it his speech. And really some exceedingly small portion of it is his, but not enough to signify. It is merely a Waterloo. It is Wellington's battle, in some degree, and we call it his, but there are others that contributed. It takes 1,000 men to invent a telegraph, or a steam engine, or a phonograph, or a photograph, or a telephone, or any other important thing. And the last man gets the credit, and we forget the others. He added his little mite. That is all he did. These object lessons should teach us that 99 parts of all things that proceed from the intellect are plagiarisms, pure and simple, and the lesson ought to make us modest. But nothing can do that. then why don't we unwittingly reproduce the phrasing of a story as well as the story itself? It can hardly happen to the extent of 50 words, except in the case of a child. Its memory. Its memory tablet is not lumbered with impressions, and the actual language can have graving room there, and preserve the language a year or two. But a grown person's memory tablet is a palimpsest. Palimpsest. That's a word I don't know. Sorry about that. Palimpsest. Palimpsest. Enough to turn up some time or other and be mistaken by him for his own. No doubt we are constantly littering our literature with disconnected sentences borrowed from books at some unremembered time, and now imagined to be our own. But that is about the most we can do. In 1866, I read Dr. Holmes' poems in the Sandwich Islands. A year and a half later, I stole his dictation without knowing it and used it to dedicate my Innocents Abroad with. Then years afterwards, I was talking to Dr. Holmes about it. He was not an ignorant ass. No, not he. He only know I stole it from somebody, because I have never originated anything altogether myself, nor met anybody who had. To think of those solemn donkeys breaking a little child's heart with their ignorant rubbish about plagiarism. I couldn't sleep for blaspheming about it last night. Why, their whole lives, their whole histories, all their learning, all their thoughts, all their opinions were one solid ruck of plagiarism, and they didn't know it and never suspected it. A gang of dull and hoary pirates piously setting themselves the task of disciplining and purifying a kitten that they think they've caught filching a chop. Oh, damn. But you finish it, dear. I'm running short of vocabulary today. Ever lovingly, your friend, Mark. So, I hope that gave you a little bit of light today, because it's not to say go copy everything, but it's I just thought it was interesting. You know, two people that I consider mortal mentors, two people that have lived amazing lives and changed literature and sort of the human path, interacting in a situation that you just think, wow, all of that, you know, all of that sort of aggression and anger for something so minute. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it makes you think. And if you haven't read The Story of My Life by Helen Keller, I highly recommend it. And Mark Twain's, actually, I've decided to start reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, because it's like his quote about classics. He's got a quote. He's like, classics, books that people love to say they like, but they've never read, or something like that. But anyways, have a good day, you guys. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.